You know, they say a man's home is his castle, but they forgot to mention that in the modern world, your castle apparently comes with a Reserve Now button that any neighborhood Karen can click whenever she feels like throwing a party. I'm sitting there, minding my own business, taking that first glorious sip of coffee, the kind that's still hot enough to peel the skin off your tongue. And I look out my kitchen window. I see a bright yellow arrow. Not a small one, either. It's one of those obnoxious neon plastic "follow me to your dreams" signs, and the tip of that arrow is pointing directly at my front gate like it's the entrance to a damn Disney park. I put my mug down, my hand actually shaking a little, not from the caffeine, but from the sheer unadulterated audacity of seeing my private life turn into a public waypoint. 3 seconds later, my phone pings. It's an automated confirmation email telling me my ranch, the land my family has sweated over for generations, has been successfully reserved for a caravan of 150 real estate agents. No contract, no signature, no, "Hey, can we use your grass?" Just a digital middle finger from a woman who thinks an HOA title makes her the queen of the county. It was a Tuesday, the kind of morning where the air is still crisp and the cattle are just starting to stir in the back pasture, looking like ghosts in the low mist. I stepped out onto the porch, squinting against the sun, and realized the yellow arrow wasn't a fluke. There was a whole breadcrumb trail of them lining the public road, leading straight to my driveway. My neighbor Rick, bless that man's heart, he lived for a good neighborhood disaster, comes strolling over with this crooked little smirk. He's got his thumbs hooked in his belt loops, nodding toward the signs. "Big day, Jake?" he asks, all casual-like. "Didn't know you were getting into the hospitality business. Hosting a gala for the tuxedoing clipboard crowd." I just looked at him, my brain trying to process the insanity. "Rick, I don't know what the hell is going on. I haven't signed a thing. I haven't talked to a soul." Rick, being the tactical genius he is, pulls out his phone and starts snapping photos of the signs, the road, the whole setup. "Document it, neighbor," he says, his voice dropping an octave. "Because looking at those signs, I'd say you've got about 10 minutes before the locusts arrive." He wasn't wrong. I opened that email properly then, and there it was, the smoking gun. The sender was Denise Caldwell. Now, if you live near a subdivision, you know a Denise. She's the president of the neighboring HOA, a woman who treats a misplaced trash can like a felony and carries herself with the kind of self-importance usually reserved for minor royalty or people who own jet skis. The email was blunt, almost clinical. It said the HOA had designated my ranch as the official check-in hub for their annual real estate caravan. 150 agents, scheduled to descend between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Attached was a map with a GPS pin dropped right on my heavy-duty iron gate. They hadn't even asked. They just decided. I was standing there, still in my work boots and a stained T-shirt, when the first one arrived. A silver Lexus pulls up on the shoulder of the public road. Out hops a woman in 4-inch heels, completely inappropriate for gravel. Mind you, looking at her phone with this look of utter bewilderment. She looks at the screen, looks at my locked gate, then looks at me like I'm a piece of faulty equipment. "The app says check-in is right here," she says, her voice rising in that, "I'd like to speak to the manager register." "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is a private cattle ranch. It is not an event venue. You're trespassing on a digital map that doesn't match reality." She blinked, her brain short-circuiting. The idea that a GPS pin could be wrong, or that a person would actually say no to an HOA directive, seemed to physically hurt her. As she backed her car out, Rick leaned over the fence. 90 minutes, Jake. That's my guess. In 90 minutes, the circus really starts. And God, was he right. By noon, it looked like a construction zone out there. White vans started pulling up. Men in neon vests, the international symbol for "I belong here," started setting up orange traffic cones along the road shoulder. They unfolded a check-in table. They popped up a tent. They even brought folding chairs. I'm watching this from my porch, feeling like I'm losing my mind. A vendor truck rumbles up. The driver hops out with a clipboard, walks straight to my gate, and starts inspecting the heavy chain and the padlock. "Hey," I yelled, stepping off the porch. "What do you think you're doing?" He didn't even look up, just tapped his clipboard. "HOA cleared this job, buddy. I'm here to ensure access for the caravan. I gotta get this gate open so the shuttle buses can loop through the pasture. I felt the blood hit my ears. The HOA doesn't own this gate. I do. This is private land. Get your hands off my lock. He looked confused, flipping through a stack of papers. Look, I got a work order right here. Denise Caldwell signed off. Says this is community-adjacent utility access. Rick appeared out of nowhere, right at my shoulder, looking like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. Excuse me, son, Rick says to the vendor. Could we see your certificate of insurance? The one that lists this specific property owner as additionally insured for this event. The vendor's face went blank. He looked at the paperwork. He looked at me. He looked back at Rick. I just have the HOA's policy listed here. Then you aren't covered, I told him, stepping closer. If you touch that lock and something goes wrong, or if one of those 150 agents trips on a rock on my land, you're the one getting sued. Not Denise, because you're operating on private property without the owner's consent. You want to bet your business on a work order from a neighborhood committee. The guy paled. He looked at the crowd of realtors starting to gather behind him, people already pulling out their phones to film the delay. He saw the liability trap opening up beneath his feet. I'm out, he muttered, throwing his clipboard into the cab. I'm not losing my license for a backyard social. But the pressure didn't stop. It just got heavier. More cars were lining up. I could hear the murmur of the crowd, the impatient honking. I went back inside for a second, sitting at the kitchen table, my head in my hands. My wife was worried. The kids were asking why there were so many people outside, and for a split second, I actually thought about just giving in. I thought, maybe it's easier to just open the gate. Let them have their 2 hours. It'll be over, and I won't have to be the mean neighbor. I won't have to deal with the fallout. It's that trap we all fall into, right? The desire for peace that makes us let people walk all over us. But then Rick tapped on the screen door. He had his tablet in his hand. Jake, you got to see this. I did some digging while they were setting up the tent. He showed me a series of emails he'd managed to intercept through a contact on the county board. It turns out Denise hadn't just misunderstood the boundaries. She'd actually sent out forged documents to the real estate board, pretending she had county approval to use my ranch as a temporary easement. She'd lied to the vendors, lied to the agents, and was currently lying to the crowd outside. That was the Joel I needed. This wasn't a mistake. This was a hostile takeover. It was fraud. And once you realize someone is trying to rob you of your rights under the guise of neighborliness, the politeness goes right out the window. The next day, the actual day of the event, my gate became ground zero. It was like a movie scene. A sea of luxury SUVs, security guards with radios trying to look important, and then the grand finale. A locksmith arrived. A guy with a grinding tool and a fresh set of orders to cut my lock. I didn't wait. I walked right up to the line, with Rick on one side and my phone recording on the other. Stop, I said. The locksmith paused, the tool hovering an inch from my chain. Show me your owner authorization. Now. He looked at Denise, who had finally appeared. She was dressed in a power suit, holding a clipboard like it was a scepter. She tried to give me this sugary, condescending smile. The kind people use when they're about to tell you something is for your own good. Jake, honey, she said, her voice loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. We're just trying to foster positive neighbor relations. This caravan brings a lot of prestige to the area. It's a community effort. I'm not in your community, Denise, I said, my voice cold. I'm in the county, and this property is private. You told this man he had the right to cut my lock. That's a felony. Just then, a sheriff's deputy, who I'd called 20 minutes prior, pulled up, his lights flashing, but no siren. He stepped out, looking tired, the way law enforcement looks when they have to deal with HOA drama. Denise immediately swarmed him, her words coming out in a frantic blur about easements and public interest. The deputy didn't even blink. He looked at her, then at me, then at the map Rick had printed out. Ma'am, he said, cutting her off mid-sentence. Private property is private property. Your HOA bylaws end at your curb. They don't jump over his fence. And that's when the twist, the beautiful, soul-satisfying twist, happened. See, Denise had told everyone that the county was in the process of seizing this land for a road expansion anyway. so she was just getting ahead of the curve. But Rick, beautiful, brilliant Rick, had pulled the actual GIS maps. He held them up for the deputy and the crowd of agents to see. There was a red dotted line on the map, sure. It was labeled Proposed Easement, under review. "It's a draft, Denise," I said, letting the words sink in. "You built an entire 150-person event on a maybe from a meeting 3 years ago. You lied to every agent here, telling them this was a legal route." The crowd turned. You could actually feel the temperature drop. These were real estate agents. Their entire lives revolve around clear titles and legal access. Suddenly, they realized they weren't guests at a prestigious event. They were participants in a massive legal liability. One woman in the front row looked at her phone and gasped. The MLS system just flagged the event location as invalid access, she shouted. "My attendance credits for the year just got wiped." That was the killing blow. Phones started buzzing everywhere as the system updated. Cancellations started rolling in real time. Denise's face went from a confident pink to a sickly, chalky white. Her authority was evaporating right in front of her. The deputy started stacking the paperwork. Unpermitted encroachments, fake approvals, invalid insurance, and the big one, GPS fraud. "I'd start packing up those chairs if I were you, ma'am," he told Denise, "before I have to start writing citations for every single vehicle blocking this public thoroughfare." It was a slow, agonizing retreat. I stood there, leaning against my gate, watching the circus pack up. The orange cones were tossed into the back of a van. The folding chairs were snapped shut. The Follow Your Dreams arrows were ripped out of the dirt. Denise tried one last time, walking up to me while the deputy was finishing his report. She didn't look like a queen anymore. She looked like a woman who'd just realized she was going to have to explain a 5-figure loss to her board. Would more insurance make you comfortable?" she asked, her voice cracking. "We could rewrite the policy right now." I didn't even answer. I just pointed to a sign I'd hung on the gate that morning, right above my lock. "No events, no access, no exceptions. Violators will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." She walked away then, her heels clicking on the pavement, her clipboard hanging at her side like a broken shield. Humiliated doesn't even begin to describe it. As the last SUV peeled away and the dust settled, the silence of the ranch rushed back in. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I could hear the cattle shifting in the pasture again. I could see the wind blowing a stray piece of yellow plastic down the road, away from my land. The deputy handed me a copy of his report, thick, detailed, and damning. He gave me a nod. "Good luck with the fallout, Jake. I think she's going to be busy with her own board for a while." Later that evening, I got a formal apology in my inbox. It was stiff, written by a lawyer, admitting they'd misinterpreted the boundaries of their authority. "Rick tells me the HOA board suspended her from event planning for a year, and there's talk of a full removal. I'm sitting on my porch now, the sun dipping low and turning the fields into a sea of gold. The gate is locked. The road is empty. And I'm thinking about how many people would have just let it happen. How many people are so afraid of making a scene that they let the Denises of the world redraw the maps of their lives. It makes me wonder, at what point does being a good neighbor turn into being a doormat? Where do you draw the line between keeping the peace and losing your soul? Because in the end, it was simple. My land isn't a community-adjacent utility. It's my life. And if you want a piece of it, you'd better bring a lot more than a clipboard and a yellow arrow. So tell me, have you ever had someone try to volunteer your property or your time without asking? Did you cave in to keep the peace, or did you stand your ground? Because honestly, I'm starting to think the only way to deal with a bully is to make sure the gate stays locked, no matter how many Lexus SUVs are idling outside. Drop a comment and let me know if I was the jerk here, or if you'd have done the exact same thing. And hey, if you think property rights still matter in this crazy world, hit that share button. Let's remind people that private still means something.